Hello, I'm just going to try and do a sort of postscript in a way to some of my previous videos on things about negation and ethical foundations of things and ethical substrates to things like diabolism. And what I wanted to think about really here is something that tends to come up at times, which is this sense of the devil, for instance, as an adversarial power. Yeah, and it's something which does tend to come up. I find the term adversarial kind of quite limiting, really. I don't much like it, and the reason I don't like it is because I see it used as a sort of as exemplifying and justifying what is essentially a rather immature and adolescent attitude towards things. Yeah, you know, as I've said before, a rebellion is an important thing. The capacity for rebellion, the capacity for rejection, and all these things. These are very, very important. But you have to get these things straight, otherwise you get into a bit of a mess, and people end up as eternal rebels, eternal adolescents, and basically not growing up. Yeah. What I feel is that we come into being through an act of negation. Yeah. However that happens, we come through a denial of non-existence. Yeah. A denial of non-existence is implicit in our being. Yeah. And this capacity, this primordial act, if you want to call it that, this primordial phenomenon, this primordial quality, which negates non-existence, is massively important. And out of that comes our existence, our will to live, everything basically. Yeah, it's our abiding victory. Yeah, and this is something which is tremendously important for us. We carry it with us. We carry it with us unconsciously. We often don't realize it because it's so primordial. Now, we, of course, through that also carry a capacity for negation, which is massively important in our lives. It allows us to think differently, to imagine, and the role of imagination and things is very, very important as well. Will and imagination always were quoted to me as being the sort of the roots of magic. The root components of magic was the use of will and imagination, sometimes with the kind of factor X, which would, bring about this sort of marriage into something beyond these things. But the act of negation is very important because it's the root of will. There is no will without resistance, yeah? Will always requires something to resist. So the arising of will at its most basic, the will to be, the will to exist, is an enormous act of resistance in a sense, yeah? Now this is something we carry with us, and we should understand that. We should understand that our will and our lust for life and our capacity to live and thrive and create is all comes from this. But further, our capacity to negate, to think differently, to imagine differently, to say no to things, yeah, these are all extremely important, yeah. But they are in a sense based in ourselves on a primordial yes, if you like, yeah, which comes from the negation of non-existence, yeah. And it's very, very important to understand that at base we have a positive orientation. Our orientation is towards life and existence. That is our victory. It's what we carry with us, yeah. And yes, we may negate things, yeah, And we may, because we have to be able to negate in order to be able to think differently, to imagine differently, and to create. We need that. But we should not confuse this our capacity to negate, which are creative, with a kind of fundamental negativity. Yeah, that would be appalling, and it would be a terrible, terrible error, and it will lead to a kind of moral sickness and a sickness of the will. And I think we need to understand that. Yeah, and so I hope this sort of like maybe illustrates in some sort of like a lateral way some of my attitudes towards this sense of adversariality. In other words, I don't think it's a good term, but what I do see is processes of negation into essential positivity, if you see what I mean. That's our foundation. Our foundation is that original primordial negation of non-existence, which means we come into being. And through that, we we gain this great will to live and this great lust for life, which we should embody. And we carry within us, because of that, the capacity also to actually negate in our own right, to think differently, to do differently, to create. But this is all for life. It is a positive thing. Yeah. And so that's how I would see it. Yeah. Anyway, I hope that makes sense. And I'll speak to you soon.